Hey everyone, welcome to the Sam Dever Podcast, episode 6. In this episode, I talk with my great friend, Tommy Christopoulos. Tommy is a person I met out here in Los Angeles. We went to Playhouse West together, the acting school. And the more we got to know each other, the more I realized I'm like, man, I really align with this Tommy cat because we would just have these ridiculously long conversations outside of acting class about life, the universe, God, love, you name it. So I really got to give it to Tommy too because he's been a big supporter of me getting this podcast back and going again. This is the first one doing Skype, so bear with us. I'm going to learn about all the technological ins and outs of this as we go along, but it was a great conversation, an open conversation, and I hope you enjoy. And also, I want to start having a book of the episode. The book of the episode is probably my favorite book at this point. It is by Anthony DeMello and it is called Awareness. I cannot recommend it enough. I've read it 5 times. I'm probably going to get ready to read it my 6th time soon. And he's just very, very clear and cuts through a lot of BS on a lot of life and just gets down to the root of who you are, what this thing is, a different way to look at it maybe than what society teaches us. And really, it's really hard for me to explain. I would just really highly recommend you buy it. It's $9 on Amazon. So without further ado, let's get into the episode with Tommy. Are we on? I'll let you know. And we're on the podcast. Here we are.
All right.
There's no going back now. We've pressed record. We are synced up and tuned in.
Is that tea you got there? What is that?
Decaffeinated green tea from Trader Joe's. And then I have, I don't know if it's pronounced Bigelow or Biglow, lemon ginger plus probiotics.
Okay.
Yeah, so I figure, yeah, this is nice. Got like a little station here. Got the tea, got the salt rock. I started writing things down, but then I'm like, no, we're just going to go into this. But then I'm like, well, maybe I should prepare somewhat.
Yes.
But then I thought, excuse me. But then I thought about Naval Ravikant said something on a podcast once. He said, like before he went on, he started thinking about how it was going to go and this, that, and the other. And he said immediately he threw it out the window because if we think about how this is going to go, we're just going to be playing an idea. Yeah. And this is something, I'm grateful to you for really encouraging this and getting me back on the saddle with the podcast, because sometimes you can overthink stuff. You know what I mean? You can just overthink it and like, well, I'll do it when this is ready, or when I get this piece of equipment, I'll do this. And it's like, you know what? Screw it. Let's just Skype record it and this will come out how it comes out.
Yeah. I had no idea that I inspired you in that way. So, okay, that's cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to give ourselves some type of time limit within some restraints here, because for those who don't know, which you probably don't, Tommy and I can talk for 3 to 4 hours probably. Yeah. on any given day, which is why, I really am grateful to have connected to you, because I don't know, man, like as crazy as the world can be and is, it's nice to have people that, we can both step outside the chaos sometimes and say, hey, what do you think about life? What do you think about afterlife? What do you think about death? What do you think about, like, we'll go on all these other topics and explorations, and I eat that stuff up, and I know you do too. So
I do. Yeah. And it is good to find people who, could also talk like that and enjoy it, because honestly, a lot of people I feel like can't stomach it. It's hard to. It's a heavy thing. It's heavy to be talking about heavy stuff all the time, and so yeah, I think I've drove my family a little crazy over quarantine with some of that stuff. So yeah.
So let me ask you, like, what have you always had this thirst for knowledge and exploration, or is this something that has developed in you in the past few years?
I would say, well, no, it wasn't always like this. I would say school was not friendly to me.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, it's probably like the last 5 years or so. Um, but it did start, I would say, when I was like 18. I got really into like aliens and UFOs and that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it was around the time when I wanted to pursue acting, when this thirst for knowledge came up. So yeah, definitely later on in my life.
And what
Um,
age was that?
I was 24. Yeah.
24.
So I wasn't reading any books before that, like hardly any, like nothing. So yeah, just school and learning and all that stuff. It wasn't fun for me when I was younger. So, but now it's the opposite. Now I love it, and it's pretty much what I do every day. So yeah.
Do you think it was the acting that turned you on to wanting to explore that stuff, or was it just kind of maybe coincidental?
I think it was the acting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
Yeah.
we both study at the same theater school, and they emphasize a lot on good actors are one to, experience life and explore life and tackle all like areas of life. And so I think that creative expression really instilled this need and want to uh, know things, I
Yeah.
guess. So, and I think also like as you get older too, you just become more aware of yourself and life and people, and that you are like on this planet, and this like phenomenon occurred, and so it I think it also comes with like age as well for me. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
relate to that because I feel, and you and I both trained at the same school, Playhouse West, and it's like you're reading all these plays, you're reading all these scenes, you're doing all this work, you're tapping into all these emotions, you're watching people go to the ultimate depths of humanity and their soul, which is incredible to watch. And that's one thing I took away from it too, was outside of the acting realm was, man, like I really want to experience life,
Hmm.
because we're doing all these scenes and reading all these works of art and watching movies that have to do with love and happiness and life, and there's sorrow and there's all these different things. You just realize that life is like, gosh, I kind of want to feel it all. Like
Yeah.
I want to feel it. It really taught me like to be conscious of wanting to feel something and
Yep.
have it be authentic,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, I think I don't know. I'm no expert with acting, but I feel like that's the way, like, that's how good acting occurs, I think, is from experience. So you see a lot of like the big stars, a lot of them had like tough childhoods and nomadic lives, and which I think kind of feeds into all the characters that they play. And so, yeah.
I think Joe Rogan said that, yeah, like you take a lot of, whether they were big time musicians or actors or artists, all of them had some type of rough history of
Yeah.
some kind, because I feel that I read something the other day. Gosh, where was it from? I can't remember, but it basically said that same concept. Like when you hit certain points in your life, like that's where great art can come from. It comes from sometimes the deepest pain
Yeah.
that you
Essentially
have.
some type of like trauma, really. Uh,
Yeah.
so no, it's true. It's true. But also happiness too.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, man. Like we talk about this all the time. Like I keep repeating. I'm just on repeat with this concept because especially this past year I've had, and just slowing down from everything, just realizing, man, it's all about being present. There really is nothing else. And this whole happiness, and whether you're happy or you're not happy, it's like you can have all the conditions of happiness around you, but if you're not present and your mind's somewhere else and you're already thinking about that, you're not there. You're not you live in constant anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's crazy though, because it's like I realize this and I know this and I've tapped more into it, but it's crazy how and actually getting back on social media does not help this. But
Uh,
when you start to like disconnect again, it's just so crazy how easy it is to just get lost in the shuffle again mentally. Like just to get lost up here and
yeah.
have everything spitting. Do you ever feel that way or?
Yeah, I used to a lot. Not as much anymore. And I would say right before pursuing the acting, it was around the time when I moved out to LA and got into all of that, where I was more active on social media and more aware of everything. And honestly, like my image became like this thing that I was like fixated on, which sounds super narcissistic, but when you're acting all the time and you're in front of people and you're auditioning and all that stuff, it's like it kind of like makes you aware, like too aware of yourself, you know?
Mm.
And so I caught myself with that like a year or so into acting where I was like, whoa, this is not good. This is like unhealthy. Not like an intentional want, like, oh, like, look at me. But yeah, if you play into that stuff too much, it really can. There's just a lot of fluff, I think, going on right now.
Yeah.
Like where humanity's at right now, where civilization's at, it's like the most it's ever been with social media and the news and film and television and all this stuff. You know, our ancestors weren't dealing with this like 100 years ago. So, not to be too negative. I mean, there's obviously a lot of good stuff that comes from this, but I think there's definitely a learning curve. So.
We're getting to the good stuff now. I'm like, I knew with Tommy, we're 10 under 11 minutes in, and already yeah, man, the fluff. Like,
it is. There's a lot of fluff, you know?
Yeah, and just to relate it to acting real quick, it's like with acting, it's almost a necessary evil because you are your product. Like you are your brand. So I get it, but that doesn't mean that that's healthy to do all the time. And even me, I took a 3-month break from social media, got back on, and it's so crazy. Like I'm like, oh, I'm just gonna do a post like once a week, and maybe talk to a couple people on direct message, and then it starts, well, maybe I'll do another post. And it reels you in like a fishing lure.
It's it's like
and I'm in, and I'm like, and now I'm like, okay, like it is what it is.
Like a forest fire.
Yeah, but
a little leaf like starts to burn, and then it just touches a piece of grass, and then before you know it, the whole fucking forest is on fire.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like what I've relating to what you just said, like it's like there's something to be said now about like just pure vulnerability and I guess you could say authenticity and just not caring what people think. But what we live in is this world now where it's like everything is a presentation. A friend of mine the other day put something brilliant. They said, what did they say? They were going to someone's Instagram, right? And they told me that they were curious to see how this person sold themselves.
Okay.
And that really just kind of blew me away because I'm like, that's exactly what it is. I mean, that's what online dating apps and stuff are. You are selling a version of yourself that you want people to think that this is who I am. It's a marketing campaign.
Yeah.
Really. And it's
sick.
It's really crazy, and you're right. Like, yeah. Go ahead.
We all play into it to some degree, you know?
Yeah.
It's kind of like there's like no, well, I guess maybe there is some way of escaping. You could just like not go on. But yeah, I've had my fair share of like unhealthy moments on it, I mean, I've started like 4 different accounts, 2 different YouTube channels, thinking I want to try all these things. And I'm like, you know what? I don't care. I just wanted to try it, and then it never works out. I'm just like, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's you're right. It's so easy to get like lost in it and let it kind of like reel you in,
Well, it lets you know that's what it's programmed to do, and I'm well aware of it. I have a book, 10 Reasons to, right here, 10 Arguments for Deleting Your Social Media Accounts by Jaron Lanier, which is really good, and another one called Don't Watch This, and it's like they all, like, it is like fire, right? Because fire can be used to heat your home and cook your food, to help you survive. But if you're not careful with it, it can burn you or burn everything down and kill you too.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
and then too, like, I mean, social media is related, but like when you're talking about the fluff, it's like what disturbs me is when we get in this comparison game, especially when it's going to be younger people looking up to certain people who are showcasing a quote unquote lifestyle. And I guess, you know what, I fell victim to it. I used to watch MTV Cribs.
Okay. Yeah, me too.
That's honestly, I'm not kidding you. MTV Cribs is kind of what was a motivator for me to want to do certain things and live on the West Coast. Because they were showing all these musicians and actors and these cribs and the palm trees and the glitz and the glam. I'm like, yeah, this is going to be cool, you know? That's where I want to be. And but the reality is that's not that's not real life. Like, and it's I mean, that was years and years ago, and I realize now that that's all materialism and superficial.
Yeah.
But you know, people thinking that their life is a failure or their life is no good because, oh, well, I don't have what I'm seeing on TV or what I'm seeing in the magazine or what I'm seeing that person on social media. You know, my life's no good, and it's just far, far from true. It's just like, it's like your life's beautiful. Life's amazing no matter where you're at and what situation you can be in. You can find joy. You know what I mean? And
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we could go on about that.
Yeah, but you know, I don't know. I definitely taken a step back from it. I don't post as much as I used to, and I just don't feel like I need to at the same time. And but it's whatever, you know. If you want to use it, if you want to, however you want to use it, I mean, it's really up to you, you know. So, yeah, I don't know.
Just remember that you have a life outside of it.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, you still doing photography? I guess I haven't asked you that in a while.
Like a little bit. Every now and then. Honestly, it honestly just doesn't do much for me, to be honest. I enjoy it, but I'm kind of this person where it's like my mind always goes to like, what can I do with this, you know? Which I don't know if that's good or not, but for me, I just don't feel like it's my passion. So it's a hobby, you know, and I enjoy it every now and then. But I just don't feel like, I know a lot of photographers like bring the camera everywhere and it's like their like thing, you know, and yeah, I just don't really feel that way about it. But I was really getting into it right before COVID hit. And it was like weirdly taking off and people like wanted to take photos, like had me take photos of them and stuff. And I was like, oh, maybe this could like be a thing, you know? And then COVID hit and, you know, went into isolation.
Yeah, that kind of a bunch of stuff. I know your photos, I mean, you took some really good shots.
Yeah, it was fun. Honestly, yeah, I feel like I give a lot of credit to like the people I shot, you know, the photos of. Honestly, they were all actors and very like expressionate people and cool people, and it's just putting the right settings on and being, you know, just, I don't know, taking a photo, I guess. But I'm like totally like undermining like photography. There's a lot that goes into it is hard.
People that have studied for years and do all this, like, oh yeah, you just go out and just shoot some good people. It works.
No, it is a tough job, and it's the editing part I think is the hardest part.
Yeah.
I don't think it's the actual photo shoot. I think it's because with the photo shoot you have time to like scout locations, talk to your subject, like have all this stuff in your mind, you know, and then you feel it out when you're there. You can't really plan how you're going to shoot things, you know. It's by feel. And then I think really the hardest part I had was like taking those photos and then having to edit it, because I would like go through it, edit it, be like, oh, I like it, and then like an hour later I would look at it and be like, I don't like this anymore. And then it was like this constant like thing, and yeah. So
Someone told me once, a model told me, I think a photographer told them that for every 1,000 photos you take, you
yeah,
might get 5 or 1,
yeah,
maybe 1, but
yeah. It's like one
a
of
very, very like you're going, and even the shoots I've done before, it's like you shoot a ton, but you're going for that one or two,
yep.
a one that really works. So it definitely, most
That's
definitely, enough.
so true. That's exactly what it is. Is it's you're kind of gambling a little bit. Like you have to have skill. It is an art, and you have to be crafty, and you do need to know angles and lighting. There is a lot that goes into it, but if you know all that stuff, it's just a matter of being at the right place at the right time, and it's just a moment like in time that you capture, and it just yeah, you go through a bunch, and it's like bam, like you can't explain it, but this one just like sticks out, you know. So
And then also to give credit to the artists, the models, it's like it is a skill to get your photo taken. Like some people are like, oh, you're just standing. Like no, like it's difficult. Like and see you see the same people over and over again in ads and stuff. It's because like well they know what to do. Like work the camera, baby. Like all that stuff. That like it's the real stuff.
it really is, yeah. I mean, when I got my like lifestyle photos done when I was doing acting and the headshots, it was nerve-wracking. I was really nervous. It was hard, you know. I feel like I'm kind of like an awkward person with that stuff, so it's not easy to, to do all that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, so now that we got the art talk out of the way.
Okay.
Where to begin?
Yeah.
With other stuff we talk about. I mean, it's kind of a pretty broad. Maybe I'll just kind of spitball and we'll. So, like I've shared with you, my journey over this past year spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
Just really reading. Like I'm trying to read it all. Like I read parts of the Bible, reading the Bhagavad Gita, reading other Eastern texts and whatnot, and just the whole concept of like we live in this world where everyone wants to be right. Like everyone tells you that they know the answer and this is it, and if you don't believe me, you're an idiot and blah blah blah. And this is one topic where when you start talking about afterlife and who are we really and what happens after you die and things of that nature, people will say they know with great conviction, but it's like, well, you can hypothesize all day, but you're kind of in the dark just as much as a lot of us. Yes, you can read certain things, and I guess what I'm trying to open up the conversation to is the whole realm of spirituality, religion, life after death, which are talks you and I have, and I know you have your own path. So I was just wondering maybe if you could go a little bit into your journey and like what your experience has been in this realm.
Yeah. Okay, I'll try not to make this too long. So I would say about maybe 6 to 8 months before COVID hit. I was dealing with I had a lot of mental health issues going on. I had dealt with OCD in my early 20s. It briefly came up and I was able to kind of kick it, but it hit me like a train when I was like 26, 28 now. And with dealing with that, depression came with it and anxiety, and it just pulled me down and down and down and down. And I was not in a good place. Had a few mental breakdowns, just full on like crying and just not a good place. And so I started seeing a therapist, and through that time I had to leave the school, which was kind of weird. I was in class with you at the time, and we were working on scenes, and what was so strange about it was that the scene that my partner and I, Julian, were doing, my character was dealing with like these intrusive thoughts. Like he was hearing like voices of like all the people he had like killed. And so at the time, before it got really bad, I was like, you know what, this might be good. I'm dealing with like intrusive thoughts, like unwarranted thoughts. I wasn't hearing voices, but
Mm.
that's maybe, it's a different thing. But I was like, maybe I can use this energy and do it into the character. But the more we got into it, I just realized that this was like, if I do this, I was afraid that I wasn't going to come back. Like I wasn't going to be the same
Mm.
person. Like this was going to leave a permanent, like some type of permanent damage. So
Mm.
I was really worried about that, just my mental health and my state of just like my being. And so left the school, uh, did about like 3 months of therapy, 3 to 6 months of therapy. Um, and I came out of it really good. My mind was like the clearest it's ever been. I was like really good, but I found that there was like this void inside of me. I think like with having a clear mind, I was able to be aware of this like void that was going on, right? Because when you're depressed and you're going through like mental health stuff, it's hard to really be aware of like other things that are going on, like what
Right.
people are saying to you, what's going on around you, and even like how you're feeling, because all you're feeling is like this
Yeah.
pain, So I think the clarity, I was able to kind of like find this like emptiness inside, and I don't know exactly how or like I guess how I got myself to like searching up like religions that had nothing to do with God, but I did. And so that's what I just was scrolling through. I was like, all right, what doesn't have God? Because at the time I didn't believe in God. And I found Buddhism, and I was like, all right, because I felt like I needed um, some type of spiritual life. It was lacking. I had like have a great family. At the time, I was pursuing something that I loved to do. I was financially stable. Like everything was like fine. I was happy with everything else, but like this one thing just seemed to be kind of like screaming at me. So took a walk to this bookstore down the street on Franklin and found this Buddhism book. It's called Buddhism Plain and Simple by Steve Hagen. And he just goes straight to the core of Buddhism, like what it is, and leaves out all the tradition and all the stuff that humans have added over the centuries. And it was like weirdly like exactly what I needed at the time. It really talked about like being present in the moment. You know a lot about Buddhism, and
Yeah. Yeah.
that the here and now is truth. It's the only truth, and this is reality right here, right now. And there were ways that I was able to take that perspective and apply it to myself and be able to kind of quiet my mind. And
Mm.
so the intrusive thoughts were starting to go away because was still dealing with it, but I was not carrying around like the guilt of like those thoughts. I don't know if anyone who's ever dealt with like intrusive thoughts, if you have, like, you probably know what I'm talking about, but it does, you kind of become like this, like, you feel like a criminal, I guess, if that makes sense. And so,
Mhm.
um, I overcame that, but I was still dealing with the thoughts, the intrusive thoughts. And so that honestly kicked it. I was able to kind of like center myself. And so, yeah. And then COVID hit. um,
Threw everybody off.
yeah, COVID hits, and I was like, I could stay in LA or I could be home with my family. And so I was like, you know what? I don't know where this is going to go. So I went home. Um, and I finished the book, and again, I still felt like there just was something like kind of cold about it, I guess.
Mm.
With Buddhism, like, don't get me wrong, it's a great perspective, and it's still something I try to apply to daily. But I think it was the God thing that kind of left me still feeling kind of a little empty, I guess.
Mm.
I don't know.
Mm.
It was just a bunch of things that led to me starting to like pick up the Bible. I bought this like prayer book. It's a bunch of Puritans. It's like a collection of Puritans that wrote like prayers and devotions and poems and affirmations and that kind of stuff. And that was kind of like the first thing that I guess was like religious, I guess, that I started to like read. So I would like read that, meditate, and stuff like that, and still wasn't really getting into Christianity or really like any other religion. Funny though was my brother was experiencing the same stuff, and I gave him my Bible, and I told him, I was like, "Oh, I found this book on Instagram. This guy was talking about like the case for Christ. It's like all this like proof that just like the real deal." So I was like feeding him all this stuff, but I wasn't doing any of that stuff to myself, and I was still kind of like, hesitant with it. And then he was watching this show called The Chosen, and he asked if I wanted to watch it because he had finished the first season, and it's about Jesus. And I was like, yeah, let's watch it. And then after the first episode, I was just like, I need to pick up this book. So yeah, I started picking it up, and then yeah, and it's just been like a never-ending kind of thing.
Right.
It's constant exploring, constant growing, and learning, and yeah.
Do you feel that Christianity almost fills that void that Buddhism really didn't fill?
I do. Yeah, I guess with like where my mindset was at then, yeah, that's what was going on, Yeah, I think that I was searching for God on it, really. That's what it was. I think I was just in denial, maybe a little like immature and just not ready to pick up the Bible. And I do feel like God reached out his hand by handing me that Buddhism book. I tell a lot of people that I do feel like that was kind of like his way of like, hey, like kind of pulling me in. It's just like, you're not ready for the book. You're not ready for it yet.
here's the starter guide.
But there's like, again, don't get me wrong. Like I'm not gonna like sit here and say that like my views or whatever is better than anyone else. It's just, it was, this is just where life took me, I guess, So
it's worked for you.
Yeah, it's worked for me. Yeah.
Yeah, and first of all, I mean, I think that's I appreciate you being open as you are sharing this, and I think it is crazy, like, I mean, not just in religion or spirituality, but just when you do start reading something you're slightly interested in, how many doors it opens to so many other things. I can't tell you how many books I've bought because I read them in other books. Because the author who I'm really aligning with their saying is like, yeah, but have you read blah, 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 blah? And I'm like, well, no. And it's like, going to Amazon, adding every single book I can get on for this quest, and maybe transitioning or staying on the same realm, but Jesus himself. That's one. And I told you my background. I mean, I grew up in the church. I grew up around a lot of that, and then stepped away for a while. And now that I'm older, reading about Jesus, and it was actually Eric and I were watching the Jesus of Nazareth series from the 70s.
That's so good. Really good.
Yeah,
that actor does
really good. And it's like, wow, it's like when you really start to, I think, people say Jesus to some people, and they immediately attach every negative thing of religion. So they get turned off and like, or get it out of my face. But like when you really though start to pay attention, and when I read the Gospels for the first time in years, I'm like, man, I'm just like, this Jesus dude knows his stuff. Like he really is on to something here, because I was reading all these other things, the Bhagavad Gita and books on Siddhartha, or the Siddhartha book, and then Buddha, and all the, I'm just looking at my spiritual collection behind me. And it's like they're all kind of saying the same type of message. And even when Jesus he's like, man, he's like telling you how to live, how to figure this thing out and live a decent life. But some people didn't really like what he was saying.
Yeah. And, I guess, abortion and homosexuality are like the two things that, I don't know if you want to get into that. We don't have to, but like those are the things that usually pop up,
with religion or
with like with Christianity, that, and I think also like the Catholic Church and all the pedophilia that was going on. But so
Well, and see, and I've talked to you about this before. I feel the message of Jesus, and not just Christianity, it can be any, whatever religion you want to go with, but the actual messages, most of them are pretty profound in a good way. You can live your life and treat other people and live with love and yada yada. But then then you get into the politics of the actual organization of the church, and that's where stuff gets really messy, because that's run by, drumroll, man. Humankind, and it kind of turns people off. And I've told you I don't mean this in a disrespectful way, but I kind of feel when I was growing up, Christianity was like having a gun to your head somewhat.
Oh, I see.
Because it was like, hey, you need to believe this, or you need to say this, and if you don't, you're going straight to hell. And it's like, okay, like let's rewind here. It's kind of like when you said God handed you the Buddha book. It's like, let's start out small here. It's like, come on, but it just can be such a turnoff to someone when you have that approach like that. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, the message, when you actually read the messages, and see, when I was younger reading this stuff, I couldn't comprehend it. No. I read it, but I didn't understand. But now that I have more life experience and been through a lot more and met all types of different people of all different races, religions, and whatever, and you're reading this stuff, I'm like, man, this is actually a really good way to live your life. So do you have any perspective maybe on that whole aspect of it, like the actual message of what Jesus is saying or Christianity is saying, and then maybe how people promote it or organize it?
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. So
we got time.
Yeah, it's well, like you're talking about like the Gospels. In the Gospels, and I believe it's in Matthew, Peter asks Jesus, "What are the two greatest commandments?" He's like, "Rabbi, Rabbi," because Jesus was a rabbi.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What's the greatest commandment?" And the first thing he says is, "Love God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your body, and all your soul." And then love your neighbor as yourself. He's like, those are the two greatest commandments, and to hold on to those two. So for me, that's like the core of it. But I do think that loving your neighbor, I think, comes from having a good relationship with God. So if you are someone who believes in God, I do see God as like unconditional love, right? Like that's what he is. The very fact that we are able to like do that is because it exists, is because that's the foundation of existence. So I think building that relationship, I think, will strengthen your ability to deeply love your neighbor unconditionally, So yeah. And yeah, what was the other question?
Well, I guess and you don't even have to answer my questions. This is a free forum. Like, we could start off with something and then somewhere else. But I guess like the way it's promoted or presented would be a better way of putting it. Like, your opinion on like how this stuff is presented to people.
That's interesting you say that, because I've been thinking about this lately. I had this thought lately about Jesus, and because that's the one thing that I'm trying to explore and be better at, is like, how can I communicate this thing that happened 2,000 years ago to people who don't believe? Like if it does come up in conversation, how can I like talk to people about this without sounding like a madman? Because if you were just to come up to someone and be like, yeah, so there's this guy and he healed like people with leprosy and he rose and came back to life and all that stuff, they'd be like, what are you talking about? But lately I've been thinking about it like this, where I feel like, here's the thing. Something happened 2,000 years ago. Whether he was God, either he was God or he wasn't, right? And if he wasn't, he was either like a madman, the devil himself, or maybe like a prophet, someone who had like wise words to say, that kind of thing. But we do have a choice. And I think that decision that you make shouldn't be taken lightly, I guess at the very least. If you're not going to believe it, fine. But, I think it's a serious claim. This is like we're talking about everything. Like if that is the truth, like it is the most important thing. And so I do think like it's something that, I don't take lightly. I encourage people not to take it lightly. Um, and yeah, I don't know if that sounds like having a gun to your head, but you know what though? I've fallen into that trap before, and I'm reading this really good book on C.S. Lewis. It's called Mere Christianity. It's one of his most famous books on Christianity. And he was talking about pride, the last chapter. I mean, it like smacked me across the face, left and right. You really got to read it. It's really good. But he does talk about like if you know you're like on the right path and you're doing this right, and that you have a good relationship with God, is that you're not looking down on people. And he's like, if you think you're better because of your religion, that's not God. That's the devil. So, and I followed into that trap. It's an easy thing to fall into where you believe this thing so much, like this is the truth. It's like you want everyone else to believe this and to feel what you're feeling. And so it's a slippery slope where you could kind of find yourself like placing yourself above people, I think, without being cautious of that. So yeah. So
Well, and that's one of my favorite things about Jesus was he was hanging with the prostitutes and the tax collectors. They're like, "What are you doing, man?" He's like, "What do you mean? What am I doing?" Like,
he's like, "I didn't come for this.
They need me more than you need me." It's like it's that's what I dug, and it's like really like approaching that. And see, that's what I mean about like the actual, whether you want to believe the story or not.
Yeah,
that's a dope concept to live your life as, not to judge people and to treat people equally and to just love your fellow human being without stereotyping them or
right.
putting them in this box.
Yeah. I mean, he said like he came for the sick. I didn't come for the righteous. I came for the sick. Yeah.
Well, and when I say the gun to your head thing, I don't mean it. I mean, maybe it comes off pretty intense, but like, I guess what I'm trying to mean with that is like, this stuff is heavy, man. Like this stuff is, and again, like I'm coming from the approach of just trying to understand it.
Yeah.
And when I'm trying to understand it, I'm trying to understand other viewpoints and other religions or how other people think on a lot of this stuff. But it's like, that's something that you're just not gonna get in 2 seconds. Like, I guess what I mean. So when someone like says like, "Hey, you need to do this or you're going straight to hell," it's like, hey, well, calm down here for a second. I'm not saying you're wrong, but like you kind of said too, it's like, well, if it is true, yeah, it's a really serious freaking thing. But at the same time, you see where I'm going with it? It's just kind of like you.
Some could argue though about the death thing, about hell and what that's like. I think it's a little vague in the Bible. I mean, I'm not a theologian, but I do think it's not. Jesus doesn't dive super super deep into what that process is like, and we kind of have like, I guess there's like 3 options currently right now with that, where it's like traditionalism, right? There's heaven and hell. Then there's like a nihilism, right? So people really bad, like Hitler, just get wiped out. Like their soul just doesn't exist anymore, right?
I never heard that before.
And then there's universalism. And I think I lean more towards universalism, where there is probably some type of purification process. And depending on how distant you are from God, determines how much purification you have to go through. So you might end up in hell. Maybe 90% of the population ends up in hell, but eventually through purification, like we'll be with God. And so I think like where the Catholic view it leans towards. I know like Bishop Barron, he's the Archbishop of Los Angeles, and
Uh-huh.
he's leaning more towards that idea that there's probably like some type of like universalism kind of going on, like that kind of thing. So if there is a God that's all loving, eternal punishment to me doesn't seem. I can't really understand that. So, but then again, I'm not God, so I don't know.
Wait, so you're saying, I want to understand. So you're saying
Yeah.
this, I've never heard of this before. So you're saying universalism, they're saying there could be a hell, but you
Yeah.
eventually will leave it after a certain, like kind of going to prison and serving your sentence type of thing.
Yeah. Well, not just serving, but like being like through purification, it would be a like painful process. Like you're talking about your soul, like being purified, right? So, I don't think it's not like a fun journey or anything like that, but, and then obviously someone like Hitler would have like the worst of it, you know. Um, but then also like with hell too, like I see it as more, it's the absence of God is really what hell is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's kind of, I think hell exists, like it's our own doing is why hell exists. And for hell to exist, like God has to exist. So, um, yeah.
Shoot, I was gonna ask something. I just
I'm like rambling right now.
no. This is, dude. This is the exact reason I wanted to do this with you because I think it's, it's you bring a very solid viewpoint on this stuff, and
Mhm.
it's just for me. I'm of the mind like you just really can't discount everything. Like when you just think like um, I'm just going to read this and this is how it is. I don't need to see or hear about anything else. Like, look, I just learned about nihilism and universalism. I had no idea that that was even talked about. Oh, this is the question. So, and we've probably talked about this before. What's your take on there being multiple paths to the same end destination? So maybe somebody, they found God through Christianity. Maybe someone, they found God from Judaism. Maybe someone found it through Hinduism. Maybe someone found it through Buddhism.
Yeah.
Maybe someone found it through something else, some meditation. So they found God. They're
Yeah.
all, because I think the concept that God's, I mean, he could be, he could not be. He's some bearded man in a robe upstairs,
Yeah.
or is God energy? Is it Mother Earth? You see where I'm going? So, like, what's your take on like there being multiple ways to get to the same
Yeah.
goal?
So, yeah, before I answer that, as far as God goes, no, I don't think it's some bearded guy, obviously in the sky. And any serious theologian doesn't believe that. Um, I think, Bishop Barron does a really good job of explaining this. It's, God is not a being, right? We're beings. He is to be, he's existence in itself, right? To be, the very fact that there is something rather than nothing is God, right? So I know it's kind of abstract, but um, so yeah. And as far as like multiple paths go, oh man, so this is tough. It's really tough, because it's I have beliefs, we all have beliefs, and but at the same time, it's like it is a belief, right? Um, I think that there's partial truths. Um, but when you have a guy who claims to be God who rose from the dead,
Mm-hmm.
um, that's where the separation from Christianity and other religions happen. Is that God became man, suffered for our, died for us, and rose, and then ascended. Well, he went to hell first for 3 days, and then he ascended up into heaven. So I think that's where there's like that separation, right? So if that's something you believe, that God became man, spoke truth, right? So his words that were spoken were the words of God. Um, then I'm not going to say that I'm not going to go read a Buddhism book and take that and apply that to my life or anything like that. But I guess I kind of see it as like maybe this is gonna sound very opinionated or very whatever, but it's like candy. You can enjoy it and it's fun, but like too much of it, I think, is like when you kind of get lost, it becomes like detrimental. I think is kind of like how I see a lot of that stuff. I know that's a very strong opinion, but it's just how I felt with my own life.
Mhm.
And Jesus has a really good quote about that. It's like the narrow gates and the wide gates, and I think there's a lot of truth with that. Um, so where it's like narrow is the way, but like broad is where most people end up, and it's an easy way to go through, but narrow is like the difficult one. But very few men end up through that, and so yeah,
I think you posted that the other day, didn't you?
I
Yeah.
did. Yeah,
Yeah. Real quick, so you said Jesus went to hell after he died on the
I
cross?
believe yes, he did. He died. Yeah, he went to hell for 3 days, and then he was, I believe, resurrected, and then that's when he ascended into heaven.
Where's that? Because that's not in the Gospels.
I think it is. It's not in the
That part
Gospels.
about him going to hell?
I believe it's in Revelations,
Oh, it's
or
in
it's in,
Revelation.
or it might be in Acts. It's either in Acts or Revelation.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't gotten through
Yeah.
Acts yet.
So it's one of those two books. Yeah. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, no, and this is I mean, we could talk all day on this topic in particular. I just, again, I even appreciate, I've learned a lot just talking to you right now about just some perspectives I hadn't thought about on
Yeah.
some of it. And I'm not in no way playing, I was about to say devil's advocate, but I'm like, do I say that in this?
Yeah. I'm okay with that.
And
Yeah.
I need to get through Acts more, but like my whole thing was kind of like, okay, so you have this amazing story,
Yeah.
and Jesus of Nazareth. I'm not, and again, when anyone listening or watching, like, I'm not basing all my thoughts on Christianity off just one Jesus of Nazareth 6-hour television series from the 70s, but
Plus,
it does a really, really good job of reenacting the scenes.
Oh, so good. Yeah.
But my whole thing
Mhm.
was like, you got this story, these amazing things, this, and then it's like the ending was just like, and we're done. He rose. Hey guys, that was it. I'm back, but now I'm going to ascend back, and it's like, well,
He spent
shouldn't
time.
there have been a lot more written on that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it just kind of really abrupt. It's very abrupt how.
So Acts is a big book, and it covers a lot of that.
Well,
So
maybe
Acts,
I need to read
it's all
through
the
it.
actions. It's all the actions taken after he rose and ascended, and so that's so there is. It's a pretty big. I think it's one of the bigger books in the New Testament. It took me a while to get through, but
Okay, well, I won't really speak then until I've really read through that then. It was just observation.
yeah. I mean, I'm no expert either, so I don't, but
We're just yeah, either way. I think and maybe to round out this segment, it's like whether you believe or you don't believe, whether you think it's complete truth, whether you think it's just someone wrote this story.
yeah.
When it comes to Jesus, there's another topic I'd like to talk to you about that we were kind of touching on.
Let's do it.
It's like the words written and what he had said, there's a lot of truth in that, a lot of truth in a lot of the Gospels. And the thing that blew my mind, that I never knew this growing up in the church and stuff growing up, or at least I didn't put it together. There's no recording of him between ages 12
to 30.
and 30.
Yeah,
And it's like, when I first learned that, I'm like, what was that again? Rewind?
yeah.
That is not only a huge span of time, but that's a huge part of development.
Yeah.
From 12 to 30. I mean, you're becoming a boy to a man, basically. And I'm like, it just made me really, really curious, like what could have happened during that time. And I was talking to you the last time we had spoken, and I mean, who knows? He could have gone to India. He could have gone to India and trained with some of the masters over there and brought that back. I mean, maybe not, but it's just like, I don't know. It just was very odd to me that there's 18 years really not documented at all during very crucial parts of someone's development. So you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I have some thoughts. But I also I want to say two things.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'll respond to that first. I guess is that yeah, that is it's strange, and that's tough. What I will say is that you know, reading the Gospels and him speaking. I mean, he references the Old Testament a lot. So clearly, I mean, he was a rabbi, right? So he was an expert in the law, right, or in the law, or however you want to say it. And he did establish a good relationship with John the Baptist, who baptized him when he was a baby. So I would say it. I think it's maybe a little bit of a stretch, only because it's people go their whole lives, especially during that time, studying the Torah, right? I mean, they have to memorize over 600 laws. They also had to recite the entire Torah from memory, which is interesting. Actually, their memories were a lot better than ours now.
Holy cow! From memory?
From memory, yeah. A lot of them were like very what's the word I'm looking for? They were
Well,
just
I guess, yeah.
they were very sharp with they're very sharp with their religion, which was Judaism. So I think it'd be hard for him to juggle Hinduism and everything he preached. What, like, he mentions a lot of stuff that's in the Old Testament, and he actually like ends up fulfilling what was prophesied 1,000 years before that. So everything that he recites is a lot of it is him recycling things that have been mentioned before, but he's a lot of what was going on during that time was people were not truthfully following the core of what Judaism was, and he was here to kind of like set things straight, and also like fulfill the law, like uphold the law. People weren't like upholding the law, I guess, right? Like the pharaohs were like, what are you doing with prostitutes and tax collectors? Tax collectors were the most hated people during that time, and the first gospel, Matthew, was a tax collector. So yeah, it's like I see it as like he came to uphold the law, but then like also to like fulfill the law, fulfill what was prophesied. And yeah, but I had a really interesting interaction with someone. I'm not going to name any names, but I was at some event thing, and it was a weekend long thing, and he's someone that has been a Christian most of his life, and I was struggling with some stuff, and I was kind of like shifting away from things and pulling away from Christianity, and I mentioned to him like some of my struggles with it and some of the things I had a hard time believing, like the miracles and the resurrection, that kind of stuff. And the only thing he had to say to me, and he's a smart man, really smart guy, went to a great college, like he knows his shit. All he said was, it's a hard thing to believe. That's literally all he said was, yeah, man, it's a hard thing to believe, And at the time, I was like, huh, that's an interesting like response. But like looking back on that, I think it was like the perfect response, honestly, for me. So I guess I approach it that way now, where it's like, yeah, it's not easy, it's not an easy thing to believe. And I don't think it should be an easy thing to believe, because if it is the truth, I don't see that at all being some like simple thing. And I know C.S. Lewis talks a lot about that too. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean that's probably sunk in more than someone telling you, man, don't ask questions, just believe it. But this is someone that you respected and who's intelligent saying, yeah, man, it's crazy, isn't it?
He's like literally, yeah, he's like, yeah, man, like it's a hard thing to believe because it is. I mean, it is like I am aware, and I hope other Christians and stuff like that are aware that like, yeah, like it's a hard thing to believe. It really is, and I can't prove it, but I also don't think it's my duty. I don't think it's anyone's duty to like like come follow me, like believe in this thing, like strong arm people into like it's not. I don't think it's my duty to like convince people with these intelligent things to like follow either. So, which is a whole nother thing. But
Yeah.
you know,
No, I appreciate you. And there is a couple more things I'd like us to maybe touch on before we wrap.
yeah, yeah.
About under an hour in. And it's like, man, that was just once that we could do this for 4 hours, man. But it's like you mentioned earlier about, and I appreciate you being open and sharing your perspective and beliefs on this forum. Because I mean, I love talking about this stuff. This is fascinating, man. I'd rather talk about this than celebrity gossip or constant news headlines we're bombarded with.
One thing before you ask, I want to say one thing to anyone that's listening is that it's I don't want to come off and saying that like it's my way or the highway or whatever else believes is just like subpar to like Christianity or anything like that. Like you're right, the core of Christianity is not that. And if that's how you feel, then like it's not right. Like you're not following God, you're following the devil. So I'm not going to sit here and like undermine Buddhism or Hinduism or anything like that. Like, yeah, a lot of them do say a lot of the same stuff, I guess. So but when there's a man who claims to be God and you believe that he rose, that it's like something occurred there. So I guess it's like the only thing I have to say is like challenge that, So
I'll at the end of Jesus of Nazareth, because a lot of people have claimed to be God, right?
Yeah.
Something, but everyone dies.
Which he preaches about too.
Yeah. At the end of Jesus of Nazareth, when he goes to the one of the, it was actually the guy who played Bilbo Baggins in Lord of the Rings.
Oh.
He was in that. He's
really?
The head rabbi. Yeah, Eric pointed that out to me. He's like, yeah, that's Bilbo Baggins. Like, I forgot the actor's name, but he goes to the tomb which they had guarded, and he's gone.
Yeah.
And he's just like, I think
there's 3 women that followed him, Mary Magdalene, and there were women that went to go check up on him, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, and he says, and so it begins, because whether Jesus rose from that tomb and left, or I'm sweating, or no, maybe it's anyway. Whether Jesus rose from that tomb or someone took that body, just for hypothetical reasons, like took that body and made it appear like he left, he realized it wouldn't matter because that tomb was empty, and now people are going to go off that. You know what I mean? And I don't mean that in like a bad way. It's like they were so adamant on like guard that tomb, because if that tomb's empty, whether he does rise or he doesn't, but that body's missing from there, everyone's going to be like, well, see, he was right. They were very adamant. So to your point, like, it's like, that's, I guess, for if you're making an argument for Christianity, it's like, well, all these people are dead. And this one, if you believe, he transcended that. He died and came back and did what he said he was going to do, type of thing. So, that's a whole other.
It is, yeah. There's a lot there with it. Well, the crucifixion is one thing. I mean, there's no way you're surviving a crucifixion. It is like the worst way to possibly die. There's actually a really good YouTube video. It's like 25 minutes, and it goes in depth on like what occurred, like the whole like him being crucified and all.
Oh, that whole process.
Yeah, but anyways.
Well, we're at the hour mark, and one more thing. Kind of in the realm, you mentioned mental health and in particular OCD, and we've had these talks. I too deal with OCD at a pretty it's pretty severe at times, or it has been in the past for me.
Sorry.
But I don't even know if I have any direction to go with that. It's just like, but it's like one of those things, like when people hear OCD, they may not take it that serious, or like, oh, you wash your hands a lot, or, this, that, or the other. But like, no, it goes well beyond that. I mean, it can get so bad that it's controlling literally every move you're having to make on everything. And shoot, when I saw you, what was it? Has that been a month now when you were out here?
About a month, yeah, I think
Yeah,
so.
I couldn't. I had to make sure everything was right at the place we left, and this, that, and the other. So I guess maybe we can maybe just start a little dialogue on just mental health and
Yeah.
CD, maybe, because it is a very. And I applaud you for going to therapy. And I've talked to a lot of friends now who have done that, and I'm like, man, even if you don't have like a major thing happening mentally, like therapy can be should still like kind of be part of the routine. I think maybe, and how good it is just to talk things out and to get out of your head, because we get stuck in our heads.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of it. I do it all the time. Like I'm like, I just keep everything in here.
Mhm.
And it is amazing though when you actually talk to a friend or start talking stuff out with someone, how much better you freaking feel. Because
Yeah.
I feel like you're able to even talk yourself, even with OCD. Like I'm able to, and I got this book behind me, Taking Back OCD, or
Oh.
Talking Back to OCD. And one of the things they talk about is, and actually in the book, it's by, anyway, I don't want to get people too confused. But basically, whenever you got something going through your mind,
Mhm.
or you're really worried about something or whatever, actually talking it out loud and talking what is going on. Because there's times where I'm like, man, I just touched that doorknob 10 times. It's like, that's ridiculous. That is insane. You kind of laugh at it. You're like, man, that was really
Yeah.
ridiculous. But when I'm not expressing that, when I'm not talking it and I'm in here
Mhm.
and not talking to anyone,
Dangerous
wow,
place to
man,
be.
it's a trap, man.
It really is. Yeah.
So I don't know if the intrusive thoughts thing. I mean, mine, and that this should probably be a whole other podcast, to be honest with you. But it's it's real. It's real. So that's why I was glad. I've talked to some other people too that have dealt with it, but talking to you too, it's like, wow. I'm like, I'm not the only one. Like, there's other people. So would you mind maybe sharing a little bit about your experience in that realm?
Oh man, yeah. I mean, well, maybe I won't get into detail like what the intrusive thoughts were, but
Right, right. But general.
yeah, it sprung up randomly when I was like 22. I remember actually vividly where I was. I was right outside my house. My car was parked where right in front of the mailbox. I think I had just gotten out of the car. I was going into the car. And it just like out of nowhere, like there's just like these random, like just unwarranted, like I don't want to be thinking about these. Like this is like, like what the I was like, whoa. But I think like being younger, I wasn't overthinking things as much. I wasn't seeking like knowledge like I am now and reading books. I think it was a lot easier for me to like kind of brush it off. I don't know if it was a healthy that I did that, but it's a lot easier for me to not fixate on it. So didn't deal with it for a while, but I did deal with some social anxiety for a little bit. And I had a few panic attacks one time when I was working at GNC, and I had to like ring up people while this was going on. It was terrible. Uh,
I didn't know you worked at GNC.
I did for a little bit, like 6 months, yeah. It
Yeah.
happened one time also at the Park District. Just this feeling of like I feel like I'm dying, like I'm like separating from my body. Luckily, it hasn't happened in a really long time. But so yeah, those two things briefly happened for a little bit in my early 20s, and then it wasn't until I was about a year and a half into studying acting at the theater school, and it just out of nowhere just hit me like a freaking train. And it just got really, really bad. And someone told me this once. It's kind of like, and this is for people who don't know what intrusive thoughts are like. Imagine your worst nightmare, and you walk into a movie theater, you sit down, and on the screen is your worst nightmare, and it's playing on repeats, right? And you're
Mm.
like, whoa, I don't want, why is this on, right? So you get up, you leave the theater, you go into another theater, you sit down. It's a different one of your worst nightmares that's on repeats, and it's like this constant thing where you just can't escape it. And so that's kind of like what it was like, and um, yeah, it became this thing where I was carrying around a lot of guilt, and I was like, is this who I am? Like, do I like why am I thinking these things? Is this defining who I am and all this stuff? And this is a problem with people with OCD is this tremendous guilt that comes with it. Yeah, and it just got really bad. And then depression came with it, and anxiety, and yeah, I was a mess. So, yeah, it was a tough time. But if it wasn't for that, I don't think I would be like where I'm at today. You know, I know that sounds so like cliche, but
Right.
I almost feel like it brought me like to God, honestly.
Mm.
So, because none of that was a part of my life before that. So, um, but yeah, it was tough. But yeah, therapy is good. Therapy is really good. Um, but yeah, I mean, if there's anyone that is thinking about seeing a therapist or has been wanting to, because I put it off for like years actually.
Hmm.
Because I was going to see one actually for my anxiety and stuff like that, but it went away. And sometimes it takes a while to see a therapist, like months, like they're
Hmm.
booked like months. But I think it's like trial and error, you know? It's like, do you get along with this person? Do you feel comfortable? Do you see yourself being comfortable with this person and being able to like share like your demons and all that stuff? So it is kind of like a trial and error, and don't expect that the first person you meet is going to be the one, you know? So yeah, yeah, it's, yeah.
Well, I mean, I can imagine that uh, the value of that safe space of talking to somebody that, really with no judgment, because even when you talk to people, and they're not going to say anything, you, it's nice talking to that third party, I would think,
Yeah.
of someone that has no idea who what's going on. They're
There's
just,
no
you just,
bias. Like they're not a friend of yours. They're not, you know,
yeah.
there's nothing. They don't know like they might not know things that your friends know, you know, that could influence their like how they're helping you, you know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and that's, things like, shoot, I realized, like, man, we could have talked about some fitness stuff, but it's like,
Oh yeah.
it's like the last thing we could talk about. I'm like, but it kind
Yeah.
of goes hand in hand, right? With, it's like the better you feel, or the better you take care of yourself, the more, not to say you still won't have any issues, but that
Yeah.
stuff definitely helps.
Yeah.
Like, because even after this podcast, I'm going to do my therapy stuff, my exercise stuff, and I'm going to go get some sunshine in the park. And every time I do that, man, I just feel, oh my God, like, yeah, like I feel
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Uh, so have
But
you, go ahead.
no, sorry, what were you gonna say? Sorry.
Well, I was just kind of transitioning. It's like I'm trying to pack in a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
But you being, for those that don't know, I mean, you're very into fitness and training and all that stuff. Like, did that help you with your, the mental stuff? Did the physical help that, or?
Um, that's a good question. Um, I mean, for sure. Yeah, I think so. I think if anything, it has prevented maybe some things that would have came up if I didn't do it, if that makes sense. Maybe like body image stuff and things like that.
Mm,
Um,
that's interesting.
but no, yeah, I mean, look, like lifestyle is important, you know, and when you know, I guess, you know, when you're depressed and you're going through stuff, it's hard to take care of yourself, you know. But when you do take care of yourself and you work out and you know you get sore and then your body recovers and you're like now more efficient and your mind's more alert and all that stuff, it it definitely helps, I think, daily. I almost kind of like lose my mind when I don't work out. Like I'm not a fun person to be around if I don't work out.
I
Like
know
so
what you mean. Yeah.
it's like so um yeah, it's definitely helped um maybe like feel better, you know, like just like body wise, like physically feel better. I'm sure there's like mental stuff that's occurred too, for sure. Yeah, because you are like you're treating yourself really well, you know, and like that goes a long way mentally when you take care of yourself.
Mm.
There's just nothing like a hard workout, and then you get sore, and then you recover from that soreness, and now you just feel better, and you're just like,
You're stronger.
yeah, you're like it's like you took your car in for like an upgrade or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
So, um, yeah, and you know, I know we talked a lot about like God and stuff, but I think that stuff too has helped a lot with my mental health. Um, so that's put my mind at ease with a lot of things. Um, but yeah, I am obsessed with working out.
Yeah.
It's like it's probably an addiction. I kind of have like an addictive personality.
Uh-huh.
But I guess it's like if I'm gonna be addicted to something, I guess fitness is, you know.
Am I remembering your Instagram stories correctly? Can you do a walking handstand like multiple yards?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I hate talking about myself. Oh man. But yes, I can. My buddy, my childhood best friend was a gymnast growing up. Him and one of his best friends, and they just showed me when I was like, we were super young. You know, I was like 60 pounds, 70 pounds. It's so easy to learn how to walk in your hands when you're like super young, I think. I think now if I was learning it at like 160 pounds, it'd be like way harder, you know. But yes.
When did you learn to do that? Like,
The walking on the hands?
yeah.
I was maybe
Okay.
8 years old. 8, 10,
Jeez.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, what other bags of tricks does he have up his sleeve?
I know I've bombarded Instagram for a while with the fitness stuff because I'm like studying for my personal training and all that stuff. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, maybe I'll just use my Instagram as a tool to kind of like motivate people and stuff. And then it was too much for me. I couldn't handle it.
Good.
So
You had good posts though, man. It was good stuff.
yeah,
But like you said, it's like, look, man, that's another thing too. Like, and like, I just got the note, and I thought I'd be able. I just got the notification my battery's running low, and I could go grab the plug, but
okay,
we're getting to that marker. But
yeah.
it's what was I saying? Oh yeah, like it's like I feel like too with social media and all this stuff, like I'm realizing how okay it is just to completely start over on something. And that's not to say that consistency doesn't yield you great results over time and years and dedication, but if you ever do lose interest in something or you just don't want to do it anymore, like I've told this to other people too, it's okay to stop.
Mm,
It doesn't mean you're going to quit forever, but it's like it's okay. But I think what we do, and I fall into this trap, like, and this helped with all the reading I've done this past year, is like you just go on autopilot. You're like, well, I said I was going to do this, and I got to finish it out. It's like, well, dude, if it's not pressing and no one's relying on it, and it's just on you, and you don't want to do it anymore, and there's something else you'd really like to do, go drop it, do it.
right.
You know?
No,
But yeah.
you kind of, I think you put my mind at ease with that. I remember you telling me that over the phone
Oh
one
yeah,
time.
we did talk about that.
And I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, you're right. And I was like, you know what? It's like, I don't know. I'd rather like go through life, I guess, just at least trying things out. And if it lasts 1 week, you know, I guess it kind of is a little, it sucks that it's being like people are seeing that, you know, that are following you. And it's like, oh, he's doing this now and that. And it's like, part of that's probably my ADD. But, which we could talk about a whole nother time. But
Yeah, I'll be on the next one.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
man. Well, hey, man. I don't want us to lose this recording. So
yeah,
again, I find something out. Thank you for being the guinea pig, quote unquote, on
yeah,
doing the Skype thing. But man, just know I appreciate you. I'm really grateful for our friendship, and really happy that I have friends like you that I can have these open dialogues with without judgment. And we
yeah.
learn from each other. Like I'm gonna walk away from this conversation. I'm like, wow, man. Yeah, I'm gonna think about that a little bit more on a couple of things. So
Yeah.
I know not to contradict ourselves, but if people would want to find you on social media and follow you, how would they do that?
Yeah.
Or you don't have to tell them. We won't.
Yeah, I guess if you want to follow me, it's like, yeah, I'm like nobody. I just use it now for just like, it's just personal at this point now. But
Yeah.
It's Tommy. It's my name, Tommy. Christopoulos.
Okay.
And I did start a poetry one because I do like to write poetry, and I thought maybe here's another thing I started. But
Go for it.
oh, you don't have to follow that one. But yeah, that's my account. It's Tommy.Christopoulos. So
Cool, man.
but no, and I always appreciate our conversations. Like we always have good conversations, and just having them through like quarantine, was like huge for me. Like it was.
Yeah, same here.
Really enjoyed. I mean, we were having them like once a month, maybe twice a month.
Shoot, even like every week sometimes.
Yeah. So yeah, those were really fun times, and I really appreciated that. And it is nice to find someone like you that like-minded, the same kind of like your setup is a lot like how mine is, and we're like constantly reading and stuff. So
well, like you said too, like there's certain people during quarantine that we became closer with. And so you're one of those people we became closer during this time.
I know. We saw each other all the time at the theater school, but we became closer the further we were away from each other, like physically, which is so strange.
Which is a whole other topic of souls being connected from past lifetimes and blah, blah, blah. But on the next episode with Tommy. All right, man. Well, hey, brother, really appreciate it. Stay on here. I'm going to stop our recording.
Okay.
And we'll see how this works out. Let me. Yeah. But much appreciated, man. Any final word on anything before we go?
I think there's a lot going on in this world. I think that just like love people. Also forgiveness. That's something that I'm trying. I think we need a little more forgiveness in this world. There's a lot of hate going around, but I think there's a lot of love too going on. But just keep spreading love and forgive people. People make mistakes, and yeah. So
spread love, baby.
Spread love.
Dig it, man. Well, Tommy, you're an awesome dude. We'll be talking again soon. I'm sure we'll be doing podcasting again soon. We will do the in-person version one day, so that will happen. So, but for now, I appreciate you working with what we got, brother. Keep doing your thing. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
All right, man.
I'll see you.